And good morning. I'm Carol Costello. Thank you so much for joining me. Right now, the New York prison worker accused of helping two killers bust out of prison back in June is hoping to cut a deal. She's due in court. That deal part, that's what her attorney is telling CNN, because Joyce Mitchell could face up to 8 years behind bars if she is convicted of helping the two men escape. Joining me now with more, criminal defense attorney Pate and CNN's Randy Kay. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Paige, describe this hearing and what it will entail.
Well, normally this is a very simple procedure. You go in front of the judge, you acknowledge the charges against you. What I think is going to be unique today is we believe Ms. Mitchell has waived her right to be charged by a grand jury, and she's simply going to agree to the information that's being filed by the prosecutor. And that is usually the first step towards a plea agreement, and I believe that's what her lawyer wants to do today.
Randy Kay is here, by the way, because she has a special report, The Great Prison Escape, which will premiere tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on CNN. Randy, you've done a lot of investigating into this. The interesting thing is David Sweat, one of the men who escaped, said he had no sexual relation with Joyce Mitchell, but there was a murder plot. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, about this relationship, Joyce Mitchell's lawyer also says that she never had any type of relationship at all with David Sweat, certainly not a sexual relationship, which sources tell us she did have a sexual relationship with Richard Matt. But in terms of David Sweat, we spoke with a former prisoner who worked in that tailor shop at Clinton Correctional Facility with both escapees and Joyce Mitchell, and he said there was definitely something unique between Joyce Mitchell and David Sweat. He said that when the rest of the guys would go to the mess hall for lunch, she would actually keep David Sweat back in the tailor shop and would bring him fried chicken and barbecue chicken. And even the guys there would actually call her his boo. They all had a joke that she was sort of like his girlfriend, and they teased him about it and joked about it. And one of them actually asked him directly, and he would not confirm or deny whether or not he was having a relationship with Joyce Mitchell.
But what about this murder plot? Because supposedly there was some plot to kill Joyce Mitchell's husband. And by the way, Paige, Lyle Mitchell, Joyce Mitchell's husband, is sitting in the very front row in court this morning.
Well, the murder plot itself, I think, is something that's going to be very difficult for the prosecution to prove. Apparently, all they have is the statement of the escapees, or at least obviously Mr. Sweat at this point, and that's not usually credible enough to take to a jury. So I think the prosecutor has thought about this and said, look, we're just going to leave her with these low-level charges, these less serious charges, allow her to work out some sort of a deal, because we don't have enough evidence to prove the criminal solicitation to commit the murder, which obviously would be a much more serious charge.
Yeah, and I can actually add to that just the fact that David Sweat, when he was caught, said that it was actually Joyce Mitchell's idea to kill her husband. And her attorney all along, Carol, has always said that she had nothing to do with it. She wasn't aware of the plan, that she never wanted to kill Lyle. And one night they went for Chinese food just before the escape, and she and her husband, and I guess that's when she had a change of heart, and that's when she told her attorney that she decided to let her husband live and tell him about everything that had been going on. And we have much more of that. We touch on that quite a bit in our documentary that airs tonight if you want to take a look at a clip.
Let's take a look.
A brazen escape.
There was a hole cut out of the back of the cell through which these inmates escaped.
Two convicted killers cutting their way to freedom, emerging from a manhole outside the prison walls.
We estimate they climbed down and had power tools and were able to get out to this facility.
Two dangerous murderers now free.
To kill anybody they feel like killing anytime.
How'd they get the tools? Who helped them? And what was their plan?
We're leaving no stone unturned.
A scent in the woods, false sightings, all part of a desperate search through the Adirondacks and along the Canadian border. From the ground and from the air.
They could have gone on to the north up here in all this vast woods towards Canada. Pretty easy to get lost up in there.
Law enforcement on the hunt, two dangerous fugitives on the loose, and a dramatic ending nobody sees coming.
All right, we're going to go directly live to the courtroom. That is, of course, Joyce Mitchell sitting there listening to the judge. And Pate, I just want you to walk us through what is happening right now.
Well, generally in these proceedings, the judge is going to be talking to the defendant, Ms. Mitchell in this case, advising her of what her rights are. Generally, if this is a grand jury presentment, it may be handled a little bit differently, but I haven't heard the very beginning of this hearing, and I don't know if she's already waived her right to that presentment, which we anticipate that she is going to do if she hasn't done already.
Let's listen for just a bit and see if we can discern anything.
That being the case, she should execute in open court a written waiver and consent to proceed by Superior Court.
Your Honor, my office has prepared the written waiver. I have executed it in court. I'm handing it now to Mr. Johnson with a copy of the original Superior Court information for the court.
Is it possible to have the links here reviewed? I would have so that she can sign that. I would allow that. Thank you.
So, Paige, I'm assuming a lot here, but is she signing a deal?
No, what she's doing right now is what we just discussed, Carol. She is waiving her right to that grand jury presentment. So that allows them to go forward today with just the information, just the charges filed by the prosecutor. The next step would be a plea agreement where she admits to violating the law, violating the criminal code as charged in the information, and possibly being sentenced. But this is the first step. She's simply just waiving that right to appear or have her case heard by a grand jury.
So, you know, we can see she's crying, and she's obviously very upset. And as I said before, her husband, Lyle, is sitting in the front row. Brandy, what do you know about their relationship?
At this point, Carol, I mean, we know that he certainly has gone to see her in jail. We've gotten really some mixed messages from his attorney in terms of whether or not he's forgiven her, whether or not he plans to have a future with her. It's hard to say, but you know, certainly he's there in the courtroom. We don't know if he's there to support her or to make sure that she does sign a plea deal and goes away, because she's facing 8 years in prison. So there's a good chance that she's going to get some time here.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see. I know the audio is lousy, but let's see what we can hear from the courtroom.
Signed on behalf of the people, indicating the people's consent that this matter proceed by Superior Court information. And at this time, I am now signing an order approving of the prosecution of this matter by Superior Court information. Next, Mr. Johnston, do you wish me to read the Superior Court information in full to your client?
I do not, Your Honor. I do not require that be read. And I believe that we have a plea agreement which Mr. Wiley is going to recite on the record. At least that's my understanding.
If there is a proposed disposition, I would ask District Attorney Wiley to place that on the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, set forth in the Superior Court information are the two charges that you've indicated: promoting prison contraband in the first degree and criminal facilitation in the fourth degree. The promoting prison contraband is a Class D felony, punishable by 2 1/3 to 7 years in state prison, maximum fine of $5,000. Relative to the criminal facilitation in the fourth degree charge, that is an A misdemeanor, punishable by 1 year in the county jail and fine up to $1,000. The terms and conditions of the negotiated plea and sentence are as follows. The defendant will enter a plea to the Superior Court information in full, in satisfaction of any other charges that the defendant could be charged with, including but not limited to any additional promoting prison contraband charges related to the escape of David Sweat and Richard Matt on June 6, 2012, as well as to the conspiracy to commit Lyle Mitchell, murder of Lyle Mitchell, as well as any Article 130 of the penal law charges that could be filed against Ms. Mitchell relative to sexual allegations involving David Sweat and or Richard Matt. The terms and conditions of the plea offer are as follows: that the defendant would be sentenced to 2 1/3 to 7 years indeterminate sentence on the promoting prison contraband first-degree charge with a $5,000 fine. Secondly, the defendant would be sentenced to a 1 year in county jail to be imposed concurrently on the criminal facilitation in the 4th-degree charge with a $1,000 fine, and the court would impose mandatory surcharges and crime difficulties. Additionally, the defendant would waive her right to trial, appeal, and post-conviction remedies. She would cooperate with the investigation being conducted by the New York State Inspector General's Office relative to this matter and allegations at the Clinton Correctional Facility. That Ms. Mitchell would execute a surrender agreement with the University or the State Education Department relative to her certificate as a teaching assistant that was issued effective September 1st, 2002, with a control number of 325238031. And I would just acknowledge, and I'll ask Mr. Johnson and Ms. Mitchell following to acknowledge that she has already executed that surrender and has provided me with the original of that document.
That has been done this morning, and I delivered that to Mr. Wiley this morning. Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The defendant will further cooperate in preparation of the pre-sentence investigation report that the defendant would waive, the court would issue Parker Hicks and other warnings to the defendant, and the defendant would provide a DNA sample and pay the $50 DNA data bank fee pursuant to the executive law. This encompasses the entire plea disposition, Your Honor, relative to Joyce Mitchell and her involvement relative to the escape of David Sweat and Richard Matt, which occurred on or about June 6, 2012. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, does the negotiated disposition as set forth by District Attorney Wiley, does it concur with your understanding?
Yes, it does. And the only other thing I would add is what I've said previously, is that to my knowledge, Ms. Mitchell does not have the ability, will not have the ability on the sentencing date to actually pay the fine monies out of pocket. It may be necessary for the court to issue a civil judgment, but other than that possibility, that's set forth my understanding as well.
At this time, I'm going to ask the defendant to stand and be sworn in.
Raise your hand, please. You solemnly swear the testimony that you shall give in this issue shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
All right, we're going to jump.
If I ask you a question that you don't understand, please give me your assurance that you will so inform me, and I will allow you to consult with Mr. Johnson. Do I have that assurance? First of all, do you understand that you have an absolute right to remain silent in the face of the charges lodged against you, and that by entering this plea of guilty, you give up that right and incriminate yourself? Have you had enough time to discuss this matter with Mr. Johnson to make an intelligent decision? Are you satisfied with his representation? Have you had enough time to discuss this matter with any friends or family? Do you understand that rather than accept this negotiated plea, you have the right to proceed to trial, either before the court sitting alone or before a jury? Do you understand that if you decided to go to trial rather than accept the offer, it would be the people who would have the burden of proving you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in order to secure conviction of the charges? Do you understand that if you proceeded to trial rather than accepted this offer, you would have the right to take the witness stand, give testimony in your own behalf if you wish, call witnesses in your own behalf if you wish? Mr. Johnson.
All right, we're going to jump out of this so we can help you understand what is happening inside that courtroom. Pate, obviously, Joyce Mitchell agreed to a plea deal. Here's what we got. 2 1/3 to 7 years on contraband charges, 1 year in the county jail, concurrent to run with the 2 1/3 to 7 years. Is that what you got?
It is, and there's some other conditions. She has to give up her teaching certificate. She's got to continue to cooperate in the investigation. I think that's important. I think that's what got her to this point to begin with. It's her cooperation that allowed her to get what I think is a pretty favorable deal when you consider the fact they could have charged her with the allegations of having sex with someone in custody and with the allegations of conspiring to murder her husband. So at the end of the day, I think she got a good deal.
So how long do you think she'll actually spend behind bars?
Well, that's a great question, Carol. Under New York law, they impose in cases like this an indeterminate sentence. I mean, you heard that there's a range here, 2.5 up to 7 years. She's not going to serve the 7 years unless she gets into prison and really causes some trouble. I think normally under the prison rules there, parole board guidelines, she'll probably serve about 2/3 of the sentence. But again, I think that's ultimately up to the parole board.
And Randy, are you surprised?
Yeah, I have to say I am. I mean, considering what she admitted to, and yes, it's right, you know, she did cooperate, and Paige makes a good point there. That's probably why she got a pretty good deal in most people's eyes. I mean, she admitted to helping them plan the escape, helping to, or at least planning to pick them up in the getaway car. She is the one who brought those hacksaw blades that they used to break out into that prison, and then got them to Richard Matt through one of the other prison employees by hiding them in hamburger meat. So she was quite responsible here, and I guess she knows that. And I just think about also, Carol, what if these guys had been out there and maybe they had killed somebody else? Just imagine what would have been on her shoulders after that as well.
Okay. And we just heard, by the way, that the judge just told Joyce Mitchell she will not be officially sentenced today. Is that normal procedure, Pate?
It is. Most judges like to have a pre-sentence report prepared for each defendant, and I think I heard the judge instruct her that she needs to cooperate in that process. She's going to meet with likely a probation officer who's going to obtain facts about her background, any other criminal history, which I don't think she has, and then the judge will consider all of that when he ultimately imposes the sentence. But I don't think it's a mystery here. The judge is almost certainly going to go along with the negotiated plea between both the prosecutor and the defense lawyer.
You know, the other unanswered question, Randy, did anyone else help, you know, in this escape of these two men? Did Joyce Mitchell provide any names for authorities?
That is really a big question. I mean, we know certainly that the prison guard who apparently got the hamburger meat with the hacksaw blades inside is charged in this case as well, although after David Sweat was caught, he said that he wasn't really one of the guys who was helping them, but he didn't put the meat through the proper scanner, so he's certainly being looked at. Whether or not there was anybody else that she put them in touch with or helped them, it certainly didn't seem like they had a plan B, which is why David Sweat is back in prison now and Richard Matt is dead.
Okay, so we do have someone observing the court proceedings while we're talking. Joyce Mitchell just accepted the plea deal, and as you said, Paige, she'll be officially sentenced a little later on, but she'll be immediately sent back to prison, obviously.
Right, she'll be remanded into custody, and I think under New York law, all of the time that she's currently spending in jail will count towards that sentence. So ultimately, she'll serve the balance of whatever sentence, and based upon what the parole board does with her once she's in custody in the prison system.
All right. Randy Kay, Paige Pate, thanks to both of you. I appreciate it. Be sure to join us tonight.